Hello, creepy crawlies, and welcome back to yet another episode of Ice Cream Queens, where we are going to talk about a very interesting topic this evening. So, without hesitation, let's go ahead and bring in my lovely co hosts, Magda and Lauren.
Hello,
Hello.
loves.
Hello.
Oh.
Oh, that voice. Okay.
Mm.
I take it you're still feeling a bit under the weather.
Yeah, just a little bit. It sounds like I've been smoking a couple packs a day, but you know what? I'm gonna lean into it. We're gonna say I'm feeling the sexiest doctor girlfriend.
There you go.
And we're gonna go with that.
Actually, it's got kind of the whole Kathleen Turner vibe going on. So
Mhm.
that I personally like a deeper voice. It's just kind of my anyway.
Oh well, sweetie, this voice is all for you then.
So what has everybody been doing over the last couple of days?
Oh,
Filming. We put up the Christmas tree.
Oh, is it the black wrought iron Christmas tree still?
Yes, it is.
I love it. I love it. Magda, how about you? What have you been doing?
I physical therapy. So that's been
Mm,
fun. Mm.
I
Good
under,
joy.
I understand you have a new item that you have added to your wardrobe, and I was seeing this and I was very fascinated by it. It's called a body braid.
I do. It's called a body braid, and it looks about like a giant rubber band that you wrap from top to bottom in little swirls around the body. Looks a bit fetishy, to be brutally honest. Bit of a body harness looking thing, which is not too bad. But very snug, sort of pulls the lass up, as it were, and keeps everything together. I've been jokingly referring to it as the beginnings of my exoskeleton. So
Sounds
it
like I need
works.
that.
It feels lovely. It's very uplifting. It's odd though when you take it off, you've gotten used to your joints being held a certain way and having a bit of a bounce, literal bounce to your step. So when you take it off, to me at least, it felt a bit like you do when you get out of a pool and you've been in the water and it's been sort of holding you up and all, and you get out and suddenly gravity reasserts itself and suddenly you feel heavy and clumsy. That's a bit what it's like taking the body braid back off. It makes me want to go run and put it right back on. But my physical therapist has said, no, I am not to wear it all the time, no matter how much I might like to.
Ooh.
Mm.
So I actually had to go look it up because I had
Yeah.
heard the term before, but I've never actually seen one. And quite honest, it was very interesting to see because I'm sitting there looking at it. And I'm like, this actually looks almost like a bondage contraption.
Oh,
And
entirely. Looks so
yeah,
fetishy. It's so
yes.
fetishy. I like it. Although my lovely innocent children told me that I looked like a member of the X-Men while wearing it because of the X's all over my body. So,
Oh,
so I thought superhero's nice. Fetish superhero. All right then.
That's
there you
wonderful. Just call me Mistress X.
go. I'm sorry, my mind was wandering. Um,
You could see the doo across your face.
it's been a long weekend.
Mm,
It's
mm,
been a very, very long.
indeed.
Yes. So I have to ask, knowing that we are all Tim Burton ladies and we enjoy, has anybody watched Wednesday?
Finished it.
Haven't yet. Oh,
I think I'm like
yeah.
halfway through it. I'm
Haven't
about in the
started.
center.
Yeah,
Haven't
we were
started.
like a 2 day and done on that, and started it over again.
Oh.
Uh, to the
Oh,
point to where slight spoilers here. To the point where my youngest daughter insisted on wearing her Wednesday dress today and told us she needs a pet scorpion and a rose
Oh.
that she can
oh,
carry around for her pet scorpion.
oh, how sweet! Honestly, this year has kind of been the year of remakes, and this has been the one so far that I haven't been disappointed in it at all. So far,
Mm-mm.
it's been it's wonderful. The fact that they brought Christina Ricci in and let her play a part, and I'm not let her play; she practically owns the character.
Mhm.
So but I'm glad to see that the lead actress, what's her, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Is it Lindsay Ortega?
Mm.
I am terrible with actresses, people's names. I'm bad with names.
I'm happy to see that she did study Christina Ricci's performance and was kind of spot on with that. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is Tim Burton coaching her not to blink while she's on camera. And now I can't not see that. It's like, did she blink? Karen Knight says, tell little butt Mina is her scorpion.
Yeah, that's what she calls her grandmother. Sorry. No, like I'm thinking about going to get one of those Halloween, those fake skeletons that are obviously not like no anatomical correctness there, but yeah, they have a scorpion one and I want to go get that now.
Aww.
I have gone through the show, so I will try not to give too many spoilers. Absolutely loved the show. Loved the casting. It's really nice to see some new faces I do not recognize at all. I don't know the girl who played Wednesday from the girl down the street. Never seen her before in anything. Amazing casting. Amazing job. Love that I'm getting to see. Once again, bad with names, but let's see here. Was Justin the Sandman? Played Lucifer
Gwendolyn Christie.
There you go. From Game of Thrones and all of those. I love seeing her again. I could watch her in any role. Actually, she always plays these kind of like badasses. I really want to see her come in sometime like badass looking and then be like, hi, I'm Glenda or something.
Yeah.
That would be very fun. Great seeing her. Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia. I've had a crush on Catherine Zeta-Jones since Zorro, so anything she's in, I'm just like, and I love the casting for Gomez. Thank you. Yes, I love the casting for Gomez as well. I love that they kind of went back to the traditional character from the comic books and all of that.
Yes,
great all over.
And it's just really been fun. It's been a fun, interesting story that's not pulling too much on the original, or not the original, but the movies back from the 90s, but it still plays into a lot of that. So it's very enjoyable. So tonight we are talking about, I don't know how we always end up on cannibalism, but we have decided that we are going to just completely dedicate a show to it. And so that is our choice of topic this evening. So happy Thanksgiving. I know. Speaking of, yeah.
What did we end up naming this episode again? I loved it.
Oh crap.
Fed up with people.
Fed up with people.
As soon as we posted that, though, also Geek Gumshoe came back with a incredible name. He's like from Dahmer to Donner, from Donner to Dahmer. I'm like, okay.
Fitting. Very fitting.
So, who would like to kick off? And here's to the whole new pot pie discussion. Yeah. And Eli Cash is saying, yes, let's just give me more comic ideas. Please. Go right ahead. So, this is kind of one of those areas that there is so much to cover. And when we started actually looking into it and started talking about it, I mean, you can look at it from the standpoint of movies. You can look at it from true crime and serial killers. You can actually look at it from catastrophe type situations. So that's kind of where I fell into it and started kind of doing a lot. I got kind of stuck into that mode. But one of the most interesting things that I found is the scientific study of how it could possibly be adapted as a combat for food shortage. This is kind of what. Yeah, I know. Not really, not truly. So
people. Okay, sorry.
I know.
The Soylent Green had to be in there somewhere. It had to be.
So when we started doing research, when we started talking about this, my oldest child reminded me that when she was in like 10th grade, she ended up doing a project that was on a article called "Eating the Elderly," and it was basically a overview of how to combat population overpopulation and food shortages by eating people at a certain age that are no longer contributing to society. And of course, I'm like, what class was this for? Please don't say home ec, because then I'm going to be really, really disturbed. But she was telling me it was part of a biology class. I'm just a little thrown. I'm like, this is where, okay, this is what we're discussing. But I ended up looking into this article that she did this research on. And it came out of the University of Southampton Center for Archaeology of Human Origins. And the professor's name was James Cole. And one of the things that they were talking about is that it could never be a viable substance because it doesn't have any nutritional value. As a matter of fact, it has the nutritional value of something like celery, which is predominantly water, which is negative nutritional value. Anyway, so that's kind of where my head has been all week, trying to determine whether or not we can actually live off of eating people.
Well, that takes me to the satirical story, A Modest Proposal.
Oh,
I don't know if you've ever read that. It was a satirical story written about slaughtering the children of the super poor to help with the overpopulation and feeding all of the poor people, specifically in Ireland.
ooh,
Wow.
I read that in school. It was Jonathan Swift was the author of that particular one. As I said, it's satirical. It's meant to be sarcastic and pointing out the fact that there's so absolutely no value whatsoever to the vast majority of people who are below a certain line of society. And it's interesting. If you've not read it, you should read it. It's Dr. Jonathan Swift, and it's called A Modest Proposal.
That's kind of interesting, because when the article that I was reading was actually, I think, 2010. So obviously that concept is still being somewhat thrown around, and the ideas being toyed with that could be.
Because A Modest Proposal was written in 1729.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
Wow.
and I don't know how far back the whole concept of cannibalism goes. I mean, obviously a long way back, but I mean, I do know we have documentation from like the 1800s. I mean, you have the Essex ship, which was the whaling ship that the whole story of Moby Dick was based off of, where it was 17. Okay, so I flash that back up.
29.
So
Modest
NOCG.
Proposal.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to read it. Yes. So you have, like, the Essex ship, in which it was a whaling ship in the story that Moby Dick was based off of, and the survivors had resorted to cannibalism. You have the Donner Party, of course, which is 1847, and then the soccer team. I'm drawing a blank. Which was Flight 571. Was it Uruguay? That was like in 1971, where they crashed in the Andes and resorted to cannibalism.
I've never heard of that one.
They did a movie about it, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a movie about it.
I'm gonna have to watch that movie now.
It was actually a really good movie. But
Harrowing.
Yes. But everything that I see that comes from catastrophes are generally in association with starvation and being separated from societies, and there's no societal control, and isolation is playing a big part of that. So, just kind of that breakdown of society.
I ended up down a YouTube rabbit hole. I started there, and I was just like, cannibals. And then just what popped up from there is what I ended up binging. And I swear to you, 90% of it was like modern-ish time true crime, and almost every single one, the victims were children. I don't know why that is what popped up on my feed, or maybe if that's just common with the cannibalism, like they're an easy target, they're easy to grab. But that was all that was popping up for me. I was like, maybe I just cursed myself because the first one I clicked one happened to be children, and then it just spiraled from there. But that is all I ended up with, and I was just like, I need a break from this.
It is a very, very heavy topic. And, you know, you have seen a lot of people over the last couple of months watching the Dahmer series and actually almost making light of what happened there. And so I don't think that a lot of people realize how dark and disturbing this whole topic can be. And I mean, I don't know why we always seem to fall back. It's like at some point we're going to discuss cannibalism, and we do it more than we realize.
Well,
But
it's surprisingly very out there. It's a relevant thing. There are people today that were affected by Dahmer and everything. Their family is still alive, and we are the first people to sit here, and we all have an inappropriate sense of humor. But at the same time, we're also going to be the first ones to be like, okay, this is affecting like real people. Not everyone's permissions were gotten for this. It is bringing up traumas again that they did not ask for. And so when you talk about things like cannibalism, it's very surprising that this, like, oh no, this affects people who are around today and now, and you kind of look at someone sideways and you're like, what? But if you do the math, it really, really does, though.
oh yeah.
Well, and not to mention, I had to, when we're talking about something where people make light of it or laugh about it and find ways to make it less horrifying, there is actually, once upon a time, it does not exist now, but there was a product made from soy called hufu, as in tofu, but human, right? So,
oh my god, I remember that.
Hufu was touted as the healthy human flesh alternative for cannibals who are trying to quit, or for anthropology students who were studying cannibalism. They said it was a great convenience food for cannibals. No more Friday night hunting raids. Stay home, enjoy the good, healthy taste of Hufu. This website stayed up for only a year, and I've heard that there are people that actually bought the product. I don't know of anyone who actually bought the product, but
if you bought the product, put it in the comments. Tell us.
I want to know. And there was non-stop jokes about it and things like someone said, "Oh, I wonder what it tastes like," and someone said, "Oh, well, it varies from person to person."
Oh, okay. At least I didn't say chicken.
So I think it's one of those situations where, because it is so dark and so disturbing, but also fairly rare, it's not a sort of everyday occurrence, that you have to take the power away from it by laughing at it, by making it something amusing, because otherwise the darkness of it, the thought of it is just, it's just too crushing, I think. Let's see, we've got Geekumshu says 2018 Michigan man Mark Lutinsky ate a man named Kevin Bacon. Oh no.
Unfortunate naming.
See, as I said, it's one of those moments in life that is just so dark that all we can do is laugh at it in order to make sense of it. Just like Grandma used to make.
Thanks, Eli.
Aye, we love Eli.
So I do have, and I debated whether or not I was going to use this, but we do have an audience participation question.
Oh, goodness.
Do you know anyone who has ever admitted to trying human meat?
I can say no to that one myself. No, I don't know of anyone. That's an interesting question.
I don't know of anyone off the top of my head. However, I would like to point out that if you're one of those people who bite your nails and all of that, swallow, self-cannibalism, baby. Also, that's how you get worms. Worm eggs under your nails. Don't do that. That's gross.
Ew.
Yeah.
Ew.
Good to
Okay.
know.
Worms are bad for you.
Joey the Roadie says nope. No. Unfortunately, I don't know anyone that interesting.
That I'm glad to know.
So I've actually also heard of people who have. I think there was a couple of rock stars and rappers that have snorted people's ashes. Does that fall within into that category? I mean,
Mm,
it's not really ingesting in terms of eating it, but you
interesting.
are. Yeah. I mean, does that fall into the category?
I think that's you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna say yes. It's just very burnt cannibalism.
Mm.
It's still eating someone, uh, that is weirdly, to me at least, like not my kind of thing. But I know a lot of people will like bake it into the cake and feed everyone at the party the cake, and
Mm.
um, it's a thing that people do. Also, on a lot of the true crime stuff that I watched, it was a stepping stone for some of the people who did go out and kidnap people to eat. One of the first things they did do was the ashes.
I'm loving some of the comments, by the way, on this.
What did I miss one? What was it? I was talking.
I said the ash is just overcooked.
Overcooked.
Overcooked. Exactly.
Overcooked.
I
Well,
mean,
technically, the Oxford English Dictionary simply defines cannibalism as the practice of eating the flesh of one's own species. So I don't know if snorting their ashes counts as eating. I mean, it's consuming in a way. So
It is, yeah.
I think that's
if
splitting
that
hair.
is if that is the technical definition, then a lot of mothers out there would be cannibals as well, because it is a very common practice for mothers to like keep some of the birthing,
Placenta.
the placenta bit,
Oh,
and fry that up late. It has a lot of good things for you. Apparently, I did not do this, but I do
No.
know of people who
I did
do
not.
that. I said do. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm so juvenile. But yeah, if that is the technical definition, then that would also fall under the basis of cannibalism, and that is a
Mhm.
pretty common practice.
It is. I didn't even think about that. And so, oh, okay. So thanks for going there. Or that, yeah. All of those cannibal moms not realizing it. Okay. So there
Oh, now we need a
is.
cannibal mom club.
Mm.
So there. Now we've talked about. There was a cannibal that you basically had gone online and found somebody. And the last name Arwen Menace. Am I Lauren? This was one of yours.
It was one of mine.
Yes.
I have a book that a friend of mine has since passed away, but they lent me this book. It is about a German man who he wanted to eat people. He really wanted to eat people, and he ended up going online, and he started on, like, this is way in the early days of the online, where there was absolutely, you could just find anything anywhere. Went into chat rooms. They had the cannibal room, the cannibal chat room. And pardon me. He started posting all these pictures of meat that he had like made look like human flesh, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, that's awesome!" And they all applauded him. So he put up an ad, and he was like, "Hey, I want to eat someone. Who wants to be eaten?" He actually got a taker, but then the person backed out last minute, and he was like, "Oh, okay, cool, that's fine. I want you to want me to eat you." Got a second taker, and they ended up going through with all the thing. The person ended up eating part of his own body as well. It was a very private part of his body that got chopped off first and cooked. And this guy,
given to the dog, wasn't it? Eventually, the dog wouldn't.
I don't remember that specifically. I do know that he was not happy with the texture of that bit because it was very rubbery. So later, after he hung the guy up, sliced him down the middle, took pictures of all of this, by the way, and was posting in the chat room like, "Look, guys," expecting everyone to be like, "Yay!" And they were all like, "That looks real." And then he was reported, but and you can find all of these pictures, like they were out there. But he did end up cutting up the guy, storing it in the freezer, eating off of him for a while, and he has like recipes that he was talking about, seasonings that went well with it and everything. He did get arrested, and he's just chilling in jail now. And I mean, they really didn't know how to handle it because they were like, "Well, he didn't kidnap this guy. I mean, guess it was kind of murder. It was like a murder-suicide kind of thing. They didn't really know what to do with all of that. It was a very different case than what they were expecting.
And of course, there is the one cannibalism, or the one cannibal that was based out of Japan, in which he basically had a student that he lured in and ended up cannibalizing her. And he did time, but not only did he get out of prison, but in Japan, he was celebrated kind of I don't want to say a hero, but he was a bit celebrated and actually was on the cover of a culinary magazine, which I think is a little twisted, but yeah, that's a little one of my favorite cases though, because it's not something that you hear a lot of women doing, is Catherine Knight. And isn't that your mother's name? Is that your mother's name?
Maybe we might be family. Who knows?
Yep. So, so she's based out of Australia, and she killed her fourth husband. Actually, skinned him and hung up his pelt, and that's how the police found him when they came into the house. Is that he was kind of hanging, but she actually she cooked up bits of his body and had served with boiled vegetables and had intended on inviting his children over and serving it to them, which is one of the most twisted stories I have ever heard. But it's not something that you hear that women it's not something that you hear a lot of females doing. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of an interesting case.
I one of the ones I watched was from Japan as well. I think not the one you were just talking about, but the one before was from Japan. One of the ones I researched and did a video viewing on was also Japan. It was Miyazaki, and please correct me if this is incorrect, but I believe it's Tsutomu, who was one of the people who, once again, children. I think it was his victims were all female, 2 4-year-olds, 1 5-year-old, and an 8-year-old.
Ew.
Yeah. From what I read and watched on the video, he didn't seem to cannibal. He was the one I was actually mainly speaking of when he started with the ashes. He was very close with his grandfather. There was a lot of weird family dynamics where like his sister was his mother and like a bunch of other stuff. But he ended up eating some of his grandfather's ashes after the one close relative he was with passed away. And from there, he kind of spiraled down. And on his 21st birthday, he gave himself his first birthday present of kidnapping his first victim, which from the readings, it doesn't look like he did the cannibalism thing up until the last victim, which is the one that he did take home with him. But he was working his way up to there. Luckily, he got caught relatively quickly. I know 4 is a terrible number, and it is a terrible thing to talk about. But F4 is a lot better than some of the other ones out there who have been in the 30s or, so. But that one was going through that case. That was the one I was like, I need a break.
So this is going to be a weird question, but the guy that you were reading about, did he have a weird thing with his hands where so his hands were like
they think it was a genetic disability. They think most likely because of inbreeding, because his father was his father, but his sister was also his mother, and there was this whole weird dynamic. But wrong thing to say, but I was very intrigued in how the person was introducing this, and they're like going through all this family dynamic on how all of that was messed up, and then later, and they're like, and when he went to go spy on his little sisters in the shower, no one knew where he was getting any of this from. And I'm like, no one knew where he was getting it from. The father is in the sister but that maybe that's just me. I was like, I see where he's getting it from, but okay. Well, we don't know where all that came from.
One of the interesting things that I remember about this case, because I was actually watching, or I was watching I think a YouTube that was discussing him, and I remember the hand thing, but one of his victims made a comment about his hands being weird, and was it the 4-year-old?
No, the fourth victim. She was
The
5.
fourth victim. Okay, the fourth victim made some comment about his hands being weird, and that kind of sent him into a rage. Not
Yes.
obviously that he needed.
Yeah.
That.
Trigger warning. She made a comment about his hands because she was 5, and that's what they're gonna do. And be like, you have funny hands. And he ended up grabbing her by the throat, screaming at her, "This is what you get for making comments like that." And that's how all of that set off.
It's really twisted, but it is one of those things that you have to kind of wonder, because I mean, you see people who do this, and you can kind of understand where like an adult male might gravitate towards doing this, or in an extreme situation where something has gone very wrong and you are crashed in the Andes and you don't have a source of food, and then panic starts to set in. And you can also see where somebody that's not quite, they're looking at somebody that not younger, but like looking at the opposite sex and saying, I feel this need to dominate and control them, and what better way to do that? Not that that's where my brain goes, but I'm curious why does it seem to happen to children more so than it does adults?
What do you mean, children as in the victims, or children as in wanting to eat other people?
Well, I don't know many children that want to eat other people, but I mean, it does seem to be something that people do gravitate towards children.
Sorry, on our next episode of Kids Say the Darndest Things.
Like, mommy, they look tasty.
I think perhaps the reason, right, that they would gravitate towards children is simply a matter of convenience. For one thing, they're smaller, they're easier to overpower, and easier to butcher as well because they're smaller. So I think it's a cowardly act on top of a scary, demented act, as they're the easiest ones to victimize in this particular case.
There is that. Also, it's it could be a dominance thing. It's they're easier to play dominant over. In the Miyazaki case, apparently he was very addicted to a certain type of adult entertainment on videotapes. And his taste range started kind of more normal, ended up getting more towards the violent side, and then his collection like pretty much took up an entire room, to the point to where when his mother said like, maybe you need to like not be watching so much of your videotapes and you should go to work more often, he beat her up. So like there was an issue with that. He got tired of all of the violent ones, got very much into the kind of movies that are supposed to be horror movies but look so real they end up getting banned in countries. Got very much into that. And apparently around the time, underage movies of the adult kind were not illegal in Japan until 1999. So they were quite easy to get a hold of. And when he got tired of all of the adult stuff, he moved on to that. And then went, oh, well, they're easy to grab. And that's kind of how it fell, at least in that case. Now, in other cases, I'm not sure. I would love to hear a psychologist's take on that, though. So if anyone has researched that, I would love to hear more about it. Please contact us.
Oh, yes. One other thing when it comes to laws that are a bit terrifying, as I was researching, I found that in the United States, there technically aren't any laws against cannibalism itself. Most states have laws that indirectly make it impossible to get the body matter to eat in the first place, but through things like, murder is illegal and kidnapping is illegal and things like that. But there aren't
tampering with a body.
Exactly. But there are no specific laws that say cannibalism itself as illegal. None whatsoever.
Well, next dinner party, y'all.
It seems like there's more law outlining what you can do with a cadaver versus consumption. So, because I would imagine there's a lot of laws in place about how a deceased person is going to be handled for burial and
I can just imagine the person trying to come up with writing these things like, okay, don't have sex with a dead body. Don't eat a dead body. Don't play checkers with a dead body. Don't. And they start writing out all this stuff. And finally at the end, they're like, you know what? This is just too much. Just put don't tamper. Don't
There we are.
Covers all of it.
It's a blanket law. We've got it all covered there.
Yeah.
No worries. Someone's sitting back there going, do we really have to spell all of this out?
Yes, that's
Like
the sad thing. Yes, we do.
It's like the wording on the coffee. This is hot. Hot. Don't
Wear it.
Don't wear it.
Speaking of, we do have a warning for our show. I know we're like 40 minutes in. We're a little late.
Somebody read it. Oh my god.
Warning. This show may contain strong language or disturbing topics, which may be unsuitable for children, and unusual humor, which may be unsuitable for adults.
Yeah. If you're mad at anything we're talking about, you're probably not our target audience. Sorry.
So Geek Gumshoe says most laws about what happens to a body after death are designated to benefit the funeral industry. That's interesting. Yes. And Willow says, I don't see children being drawn to cannibalism because from stories. Mommy, they look tasty.
Because from stories of my parents, they always want chicken nuggets and macaroni. Man, kids say the darndest things, though. The other day, my daughter looked at me and she was just like, Mommy, I have something very important to tell you. My daddy had blood in his brain and he died. And my auntie, she was old and she had blood in her brain and her died. And then I died. And then I came in your into your belly. And I was just like, okay. Whoa, who were you? What was your name? She was like, I was Rosie. And I'm like, don't know who Rosie is, but all right.
Good to know. So we had another comment that was about the Donner Party from Miles Out. By the way, I recognize that photo, Mr. Fish. We know that's you. I have an acquaintance whose last name is Donner, related to the Donner Party. Well, the ones that lived anyway. Should have invited him to watch the show live.
And we were looking for guests.
We were.
We're always looking for guests. Although I do enjoy my evenings with just you ladies.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You know, and this is kind of one of those subjects that's really hard to find people who just really want to get together and talk about eating people.
Yeah. So if you know someone who's an expert on cannibalism.
Anthropology students, perhaps.
We can always do a second show. There's so much to talk about. Speaking of which, best movies. Did anyone watch any?
I was about to say let's see. She says, I always wanted to go to a restaurant with a waiting list and leave the name Donner, so they would have to call out Donner Party of 8. Of course you would.
So bad.
Green Inferno. Oh yes.
I don't know that one.
That is actually one of those movies that a lot of people have on their do not watch list. It is goes very heavy into cannibalism, and there are a lot of very graphic scenes. There's a new one coming out. Is it called Bones and All? I think it was just released, and it appears to be about cannibalism, and I'm kind of interested in watching it.
Nice.
I think the most obvious one that always comes to my mind is the Cannibal Holocaust movie.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yikes. I'm not a major fan of gore for gore's sake. And that's all that movie is just solid gore. It's actually banned in the UK for quite a long time. I think it's only been like in the past maybe 15 years that it's been not banned in the UK. But then they had an odd list of movies that were banned. But horror movies, there seem to be quite a lot of them that involve cannibalism of one form or another.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it is terrifying. Can you imagine, like, someone looking and being like, oh, you're delicious. And you're like, oh, thank you. And they're like, no, I want to eat you. And you're just like, thank you?
No, thank you then. as I said, I didn't. Oh, bones and all.
Oh,
There we are.
okay,
You're
yeah.
right.
Might have to check that out.
That might be a let's go out and watch a movie night tonight thing. So actually, speaking of movies, cannibalism is one of those that I really there's only like a handful of genres that I don't particularly care for. Body horror, it depends. Some of it I'm okay with it. Some of it just really kind of gets under my skin. No pun intended. But I feel like we really need to do an episode on those movies that it's like you cannot pay me enough money to watch that movie. There's like, because there's movies that we've seen, and I feel like Cannibal Holocaust is one of those that once you've seen it, you can't go back. Need it. Okay, so need a better term for the oral other than eat. This episode really destroyed that for me now.
Nom nom nom.
Nom nom. Hills Have Eyes remake. Oh. Yeah.
Well, there's the obvious one of Hannibal Lecter. I mean,
Oh.
Hannibal the Cannibal and all that. I've always found that one fascinating and terrifying because they take a character who is so erudite and intelligent and well-spoken and well-educated, and but at the same time completely psychotic. So it's yeah, I've read all the books and I've seen all the different versions of the movies because I've got the the Red Dragon and the Manhunter and all the rest
Silence
of those.
of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs, and and the series too, which I love. Mads Mikkelsen. I'll watch anything that man does, I will watch. But it's odd that we can have such a character and make it so
romantic.
Romantic. As it's romantic.
Yeah.
It's drawing. It's the sort of thing that you want to get closer to him, and in the back of your head, you're thinking, "Am I mental? Why would I want to get closer to this man?" No. But at the same time, there's such an odd character because they've got him set in such a way that as long as you're polite, you should get along just well. No problem there, as long as you're not in his way or stopping him from getting somewhere he wants to be. But
I have a love-hate relationship with specifically probably Silence of the Lambs, maybe not the later ones. I adore the character Hannibal. Yeah, he eats people. Okay, that's fine. He's nice. He eats people who are rude.
Very charming. Yes.
Exactly. Free-range rude.
Yeah, free-range rude. Exactly. I had the biggest crush growing up. I loved this character, and I grew up watching this movie over and over and over. And it wasn't until later in like my adulthood, like 30s, I saw a creator talking about this movie and how toxic it was. And I was like, what? And I got personally offended. And I was like, hang on. I am not this person. I want to sit down and I want to hear their side of it. And the person who was speaking was a trans person. And they were talking about Buffalo Bill. And how the idea of Buffalo Bill wanting to be the woman and skinning the women and all of that, how that is just spreading farther transphobic propaganda, making people afraid. And I was just like, I had never thought of it before because I was so focused on this awesome character that is in this movie. Because I mean, great portrayal, love Hannibal. I couldn't give two craps about the Buffalo Bill or any of that stuff. I liked this guy. I had never put that together in my head. And I think that was the trans handy ma'am on TikTok that I saw talking about that. And I was just like, holy crap. I thank you. I thank you for taking your own experience and like explaining to me from someone else's in their shoes point of view. I was like, okay. But yeah, still kind of like the Hannibal character. Maybe not that movie particularly so much. But once again, the times have changed so much to where people can now come out and start talking about, hey guys, have you ever thought of this? And blew my mind. And I'm very glad for that alternate point of view. So thank you. Well, Mercury.
You also have to take into consideration, though, when you're talking about Silence of the Lambs. I know that Buffalo Bill is the villain portrayed. But he's not who that movie is about. The movie is about the relationship between Hannibal Lecter and Clarice, and so he's kind of a secondary character. So I can see where people might overlook the toxic aspect of it because they are drawn to, because the character is absolute. I mean, yes, he eats people, but he's a very charming character. And as you said, you know, if you're not rude, you know, you can actually be a dinner guest, not a dinner guest. So, and I actually really love the series. I haven't watched all of it. I watched a couple of episodes, but Mads Mikkelsen, holy, it's like, yeah, you're like, I'm attracted to this man. I know that he eats people and I probably shouldn't be, but man, oh man.
Yeah, I got a good bit into the series of that, but I had difficulty because to me it's always Anthony Hopkins. Like Anthony. And so I had to be like, you know what? I think I need to grow up a little bit. I'll come back to this series because right now I'm just like, but it's not Anthony Hopkins. I know that the actor is wonderful. I've heard rave reviews about it. Pardon me. But I needed to I need to get my head separated out of this and stop being like a control freak. It can only be this actor. So I'll come back to it eventually and probably be on team like, yes, new guy. But one day.
And honestly, there's not many people that I can say that would make you step aside from Anthony Hopkins and go, oh, he's the embodiment of this character. But as much as we loved Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal, Mads Mikkelsen was just as glorious in the role and brought something very, I think because he was able to live with the character a lot longer, brought something new and unique. There was just a totally different dynamic especially with the relationship between him and I'm drawing a blank. Well, thank you.
Well,
yes.
There's another interesting movie if you've not seen. I watch quite a lot of foreign movies. So there was, I think it was French, it might have been Belgian. There's a movie called Raw, just Raw, right? About a vegetarian, actually, who goes to veterinary school. And I think it's the first week that she's there, they do a hazing ritual, which in doing so, they force her to eat raw, I think like rabbit's kidneys or something like that. I don't remember specifically what it is. Of course, she's horrified. She's disgusting. She refuses to participate, but sort of gets forced into it and ends up getting like food poisoning. Goes to the doctor. They say, you're fine. You'll be all right. But the next day when she wakes up, she has this overwhelming craving for flesh. And she tries to go first to animals, and then it sort of spirals out of control from there. It becomes this twisted, dark, disturbing, very French sort of horror film that if you're in the mood for something very deep and heavy and sort of atmospheric, I mean, it's French. That's interesting. It's worth a watch. It's odd, but interesting. That's one of the ones. That's it. Yeah, I've only seen it the once. It's not one you want to go back and watch more than once, but I'd say it's worth the watch at least once.
I would love it. I have a question if y'all want one. How do you think cannibalism and just the general cannibalism, how do you think that relates to other characters, like vampires, werewolves, zombies in horror? How do you think that has inspired, or like the fear of being eaten and all that? Do you think like it's been directly brought from cannibalism, or do you think it was just like, oh no, they're gonna suck your blood? Like, how do you think all that ties together?
Well, I think that the idea of being consumed, literally and metaphorically, as such a both terrifying and intriguing concept for people in general. There's the idea of, people say they've been consumed by love. People have been consumed by passion. So being consumed can sometimes be seen as something positive. So I can see where it would be attractive in that idea, and say with vampires and their blood sucking and such. that's always also been associated with a more romantic sexual concepts. So it's sort of, it's like a Venn diagram, it sort of overlaps back and forth between the two. And there's something about with, see, the werewolves, it's very visceral. It's that feral feeling of being out of control and in control at the same time in ways that society does not allow us to be. So once again, it has that passion. It's sort of mixing the two between each other. So it goes along with, though I find it disgusting personally, not going to judge the number of people that have reacted positively to, as we mentioned earlier, the new Dahmer series. Part of it is because they like the actor and all of that, but it's like they're allowing themselves to be drawn into something that they wouldn't normally admit to even watching, and now they're sort of gushing about it. And as I said, it's that taboo. There's something that certain brains and certain minds and certain hearts are going to go towards the taboo and to make it into something grand and passionate instead of something terrifying and society breaking as it is.
I can follow that. Yeah.
I think a lot of the romanticized imagery that you have with vampires, werewolves, and even now with zombies is that it is a metamorphosis that takes them away from being human. You're actually no longer part of what you would consider the same species. Once you are a vampire, you're something different and more evolved, and you're, excuse the pun, but higher on the food chain. And I think that you have that with werewolves as well. Whereas I think that zombies, you kind of take a step down, but it's still the same. I think that there's an element of enjoyment for those of us who are in horror that enjoy horror, that might look at cannibalism as a bit almost ickier, just because there hasn't been that transformation. It's human consuming human, species consuming species, the same species, whereas vampires, werewolves, whatever, it is something that's different and something that's evolved now.
When you take the supernatural aspect out of it, it takes some of the fun out, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Very much so.
Yeah. And it's a difficult concept to talk about and skirt, because like you were saying, there's a lot of people who watched the new Dahmer series and they love the actor. And it is cannibalism is that weird topic to where if you're into the dark and stuff like that, when you first said the word consumed, I wasn't like, ew. I was like, yeah, consumed. Like, that's what pops into my head when I hear the word consumed. It's not this like gross thing. I'm like, I want to be consumed by something that sounds passionate and awesome. But at the same time, it's certain areas of shows like that to where you're like, okay, yes, great actor, very sexy. It's a weird subject that can be both terrifying but also intriguing at the same time. But at the same time, like, once again, the family members are still there. Also, you have to think about the people of color. How is that going to affect them? He targeted mostly people of color. He targeted gay men. That's a minority and a minority right there, just like bam. And so being the person who's like, oh, that sounds really sexy, when it's absolutely freaking terrifying, because we're obviously we're weird. But we have to like be able to step outside of that as a person in this privilege and be like, yeah, but it affected like specifically these minorities. And it's a weird subject to talk about.
Well, and I also feel like they chose the actor that they did specifically because of his sex appeal. Because I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer, where he wasn't just a hideously grotesque looking person, was not near as attractive as Evan Peters is.
Yeah.
And I mean, even, I just want to say, uglying him down just did not get him to that level. I mean, he was still highly, highly attractive. And there was a lot of mixed emotions because you're sitting there watching it. It's like, ew, this is gross, but damn, he's good looking. So
I wonder if that has more
Yes.
to do with the serial killer aspect than it does the cannibal. Because if you look at, though, there's this long line of women like
Aye.
not Jeffrey Dahmer, but
Ted,
Ted
Bundy.
Bundy. Thank you. Yes, Ted
Mhm.
Bundy. Everyone's just like, oh, he's so attractive. He's so cute.
Hmm.
And yeah, he was an attractive man, and he could talk you up a wall. But he was also a serial killer. But he had his fan base. Boy,
Mhm.
did he have his fan base. And so I wonder if that, like everyone going, whoo, so hot for the Evan Peters thing, is more along the lines of it's this obsession with serial killers more
Mhm.
and less with like the cannibalism aspect, which is its own what the hell going on over there. Like we could do an entire episode on that.
Well, there is. I've seen a lot of things recently where people are actually commenting that the love of serial killers, these love of true crime, has somewhat desensitized um, people in how they react to situations. I mean, it's
Okay.
kind of hard to say, but I mean,
All right. Can I
yep.
just talk real? Okay. So I love listening to the last podcast on the left every once in a while. I will pull up some of their episodes, and I just listened to their episode on the Bath Massacre, which was a school bombing. And they were talking about how after this massacre, and the school has blown up, and there's bodies everywhere. People lined up in their cars for blocks just to be able to drive by and look at the
Mhm.
bodies of children from a bombing. People got out of their cars and went up to the truck that had exploded and cut pieces of the bomber's intestine to put in alcohol to take home so they could talk to their friends about it. The true crime obsession has not gone. It hasn't just like showed up out of nowhere. It's just evolved because we have this thing now where we can talk to each other. It has
Yes.
always been there.
Hmm.
People have always had this like, oh, someone's run over, there's a wreck, what's going on over the it's always been there.
Well, I
It
mean,
may
that's that very much is true. I mean, just look at newspapers from around the time of Jack the Ripper.
yeah.
There were literally people uh, who lived in the row houses around where the women were found. They would charge people, a few coins to go into their room and look out the window so they could see down below and see where the bodies were. So
Yeah.
it's the freak show aspect. It's the train wreck. It's the wanting to see something truly horrible. I think so we can walk away and say, well, but for the grace of God, go away, sort of thing.
There's so many examples. Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, the
Oh,
horrors. There's
the way that it
so
started.
many.
Oh,
Aye,
yes.
oh, aye.
Mhm.
It started with decapitated royalty, so.
Exactly. There's another great example. They used to have these giant the Colosseum or the people in
Mhm.
getting decapitated. It's always been there. That would be a very fun show topic. Like the evolution of true crime is to how it
Mhm.
is now and where it began.
I actually had reached out recently, and I might have to reach out again. But I had talked to somebody. I'm on Slasher, which is another social media
Mhm.
platform that's designated for horror fans, basically. And there was a member on it that created a morbid curiosity. Uh, it was like a it was a survey, and he was kind of trying to see some information about what makes up morbid curiosity and stuff. But I think it all kind of falls within that category. It's like
Mhm.
the whole reason we slow down when we see a wreck. It's like you don't really want to see something that's really, really gross, because if you do, then you're like, ugh. But you all kind of, if you see something on the side of the road that looks like a wreck, you're going to stop and you're going to look. It's just part of human nature to want to see something gross.
Yeah. I think and this is a personal opinion, I do not have any scientific facts to follow this up, but I think it is some sort of instinct from way back in the day when we were like, oh, there's danger. What is it? I need to know so I can protect myself so that doesn't happen to me.
Yeah.
Um, we have this thing where we're like, what is that? How can I not do that to myself? And it comes from like going hunting through the woods and we hear this thing over here and we're like, what is that? Okay, no, we're good.
So, and I've always heard that the whole you can bite through your finger as easily as you can bite into a carrot. You can actually, but it's the whole self-preservation that stops you from doing it.
Mhm.
So I'm feeling like it kind of falls into that category too. It's like we want to see it because it's gross, and it's like, can I really bite my finger off? I'm like, do I really want to try? No, not really. I know.
Now we're all going to be sitting here with all right, hang on. Everyone put your finger in your mouth so we can get a still shot of the show.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Okay, there we go.
Okay,
that's going on. That's going on. No, not YouTube. What's the other one? Instagram. Later.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Oh my God. So I realized that we are officially at the top of the hour.
Oh dang, that went fast.
It always goes fast. It always does. But I just wanted to say I enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun. I'm not going to say that I really enjoyed the research on this because I kind of icked myself out a little bit. And this was, you kind of have to take it in spurts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you enjoy reading about cannibalism, there's a lot of interesting things that you can find online. I'm really kind of worrying what, when they talk about all of the government tracking, what you're researching. Oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. It's
If you do shows like this or you write fiction where there murders and things happen, your search history is very like, what?
Yeah. Mine this past week is what is the nutritional value of a human? Yep. Sorry. Somebody asked for recipes earlier. I do not have any, but I'm sure that
look up the Necronomicon.
Oh yeah. I'm sure that you can substitute long pork anywhere. Long pork for pork.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So we hear.
Okay.
We would not know, right, ladies?
No.
Blood consumption is one thing. I'm just kidding. And with
Someone
that,
got their Red Wings card. Sorry. And with that,
pleasant screams.